Hello and welcome. You're watching BTVI. I'm Sriram Iyer and this is a special telecast. It's the biggest story on Budget 2017 you've heard so far. Sources tell your channel that North Block it has cut the FY17 outlay for roads and highways and may further cap it in the coming year. Let's take it across to Chetan Bhutani, our reporter, joining us from New Delhi with the exclusive inputs. Chetan, what are you picking up? What is the cut in this year's outlay and what is the plan for February 1st from Arun Jaitley?
Well, what we've been picking up from our sources in the government right now is that Road Transport and Highways Minister has shot off a letter to Finance Minister Arun Jaitley in which he has literally red flagged issues that the highway sector has been facing with respect to the money and the finance crunch that Road Transport and Highways Ministry is facing. So currently what we are getting to hear from our sources in the Road Transport and Highways Ministry and NHAI is that Nitin Gadkari has red flagged the proposed cut in funds for highway projects. Remember, the Finance Ministry has cut its present outlay from 57,000 crore rupees that was allocated by Finance Minister Arun Jaitley in budget for 2016-17 to 52,000 rupees. So that's a 10% cut that Road Transport and Highways Ministry will be forced to work with. Now, Nitin Gadkari has also warned that that fund cut would cause a major setback to developers and the currently going on highway schemes and the highway construction projects. Now, BTVI has exclusively learned from our sources also that Nitin Gadkari has written to Finance Minister Arun Jaitley asking him that 90,000 crore rupees that they have sought should be given because there are additional liabilities that Road Transport Highways Ministry is facing with respect to demonetization that happened in November 2016 when the government had to shut toll operations for 23 days. So the government has to pay back toll operators money to the tune of about 922 crore rupees, so rounding off to about 1,000 crore rupees. Nitin Gadkari has also said in the letter that when the cabinet approved arbitral awards from NHAI to toll developers, that the money that has been stuck to the tune of about 7,500 crore rupees should be paid back by NHAI. So remember, additional about 9,000 crore rupees the government, the Road Transport and Highways Ministry and NHAI combined have to pay back to toll developers. So clearly, Nitin Gadkari has red flagged these issues. He has also said in the letter that these two basic major outlays that have been cut should be restored back. Otherwise, the 36,500 crore rupees project that have been going on and 21,000 kilometers of roads have been building across the nation will be affected majorly.
Thank you, Chetan. Thank you for the exclusive inputs. That's the big story that we are bringing to you here on BTVI. Let's take it across to Piyush Jain, our research analyst. Piyush, it's obviously a setback for road makers, isn't it?
There should be a setback, primarily because of two things here. Number one is, based on the entire sector, if the money is basically reduced, the allocation is reduced, then it implies that NHAI basically will have less headroom for investing in the projects. Now, there are three more points here. One is how much NHAI would be able to actually get fund allocations from different types of sources. We know that over the last 12 months, a lot of tie-ups with the foreign agencies, a lot of tie-ups in terms of bonds, they all actually have been arranged. So while the finance ministry is offering less allocation for the infrastructure this time, as we are learning, this actually should be primarily taken as negative for a lot of companies because of, firstly, there could be a doubt over the speed of allocation of the arbitration awards. If that delay actually happens, then it's negative for a lot of stocks like SCC, which actually have run up very significantly based on the arbitration awards alone. So if there is no delay there, then it's good. And the secondly is the speed of actually issuance of new projects. So that is one area why the infrastructure stocks, they have been running. So a lot of stocks like IRB Infra, which actually lost a very significant project in terms of the Pune project. So then again, stocks like Dilip Bilcon, ILFS Transportation, Sadbhav Engineering, Ashoka Bilcon, and other lot of stocks which have to depend on a lot of road projects, BOT projects. So I think for the infrastructure sector, it's very important. The order inflow should be very strong. Order pipeline should be very strong. So I think that basically should be an overhang depending on how basically we are seeing this news.
Thank you, Piyush. It's obviously a setback for road makers, but is there more to the story than what meets the eye? Is it just a scale down in the budgetary outlay? Does it signal a cash-strapped fisc? Is it fair to assume that the government's welfare obligations post the note ban are so big that it will eat into infrastructure investment? What will it do to the market sentiment? Will Budget 2017 belie the hopes of fiscal stimulus from the Modi government? We'll discuss all this and more with a special panel of guests joining me on the show right now. CM Vasudev and Arvind Mayaram, both former secretaries at Economic Affairs Department. We're also joined by Vinayak Chatterjee, Chairman at Feedback Infra. We're also joined by Jayant Maiskar from MEP Infra, someone who has a skin in this game. N. Ram, former editor-in-chief at The Hindu, joining us with his political perspective. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this show. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley and Nitin Gadkari, the Road Minister, at crossroads over budget outlay. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show. It's a special telecast. Please, let me come to you first, Mr. Vasudev. The situation really begs the question, what is causing this cutback? Is it a demonetization impact? Or, I mean, it might be a little too simplistic to say that, but is some of the problem stemming out of the demonetization?
Well, certainly, I think demonetization has had some effect on the slowdown of the economy. There has been a demand compression and various other disruptions in the supply chain. All that has happened. But I don't believe that this is something which is permanent. It's certainly...
We'll go take it across to Mr. Mayaram, another person who has some experience in budget making, or rather an extensive experience in budget making. Mr. Mayaram, welcome to the show. Welcome to BTVI. Essentially, what Mr. Vasudev was saying is no beep, Sherlock. Demonetization has a role to play here. Is the self-inflicted moral pressure on the government to dole out welfare schemes to offset the pain that has come from the note ban? Is it going to be so big that in fact, the government capex has to take a backseat at this point of time?
I think we must understand that there is going to be a difficult, decision in terms of balancing on one side to bring back the consumer confidence. At the moment, there is certainly across the sectors we see, because if you look at any of the indicators, there is clear indication that the inventories are piling up and people are not actually going out and so the consumer sentiment is low. If the consumer sentiment is going to continue to be low, obviously it will impact taxes, indirect taxes, and that in turn impacts the revenues of the government, and also obviously it impacts across the board investment, climate, and so on. So you need to bring consumer confidence back, and for bringing consumer confidence back, the government will have to come up with certain policy measures that will incentivize people to go out into the market and start buying. On the other hand, these incentives that the government gives, for instance, if it is excise cutback on, say, consumer durables or on automobiles or two-wheelers and so on, then that also impacts the revenues of the government. So, to that...
Here, Mr. Mayaram, you made a fair point. I mean, this is going to have trying to incentivize different sectors. All of it cannot happen at once. I'll take it across to Mr. Vasudev here. At the same point that Mr. Mayaram was making, is it going to be difficult? I mean, has the government put itself in a spot where it's going to be very difficult to manage the different priorities? And is it fair that the capital investment that the government has been doing so far, that it should take a backseat at this point of time?
No, certainly not. One of the biggest sort of advantages in a larger perspective of demonetization is that the size of the parallel economy has considerably shrunk, and which means that there is going to be a much bigger role for the fiscal policy and monetary policy makers, because the size of the regular economy has expanded considerably. And whatever it may be, whether the tax revenues, how much buoyancy it will come because of the various incentives that government has given for people to come out with their black money and all that, the fact remains that a tax base is going to considerably expand because of the size of the regular economy which is expanding. So tax base will expand. So it gives government a lot of leeway to invest more in infrastructure, to invest more in social sectors, and maybe also on the anti-poverty programs. So I think it is, and of course there has been a slowdown in the economy because of demonetization and demand compression and disruption in the supply chains. But these larger benefits which are going to kick in now, post-demonetization, I think should not be lost sight of. It will certainly provide a lot of flexibility to government to put in more money in the infrastructure sectors, and also to enable the public sector infrastructure companies.
Yes, Mr. Vasudev. I take your point here. I'll interject here. MEP Infra, Mr. Maiskar joining us, a person who has a skin in the game. Mr. Maiskar, how big a setback is it? Is it a material setback? Is it a sentimental setback? Talk to us about the arbitral awards, the process that goes into it, and how do you see, I mean, how afraid are you about February 1st when Finance Minister Arun Jaitley takes up that budget document?
As far as MEP infra is concerned, and as a sector at large, any cut or reduction in the infra spending would definitely be detrimental. Having said that, the Ministry of Roads and Surface has their own budget. Over and above that, National Highways also does raising of finances by way of bonds or raising money through capital markets. So as far as spending on the infra sector is concerned, I think any reduction would definitely be an impact on the sector going forward.
Let me take it across to N. Ram, former editor-in-chief at The Hindu. Mr. Ram, here is a ministry, the road ministry, which is perceived to be the only performing ministry, or at least the best performing ministry, something that has stood witness to the so-called success of Modinomics. Why is it that at this stage the government is forced to cut back in a place which is working for it? Why ruin something that's working for the government?
Yeah, that's very, very unfortunate if this comes about. And you seem to have an exclusive on this information, insights into this. Hard to tell, because obviously it intimates that the government is in a more difficult situation than they make out. If this is a symptom of what's going to happen, so I think it's most unfortunate. There can be no equivocation on this. I think this is a setback, and it does suggest that there are disappointing news for the government.
Mr. Ram, you're not the only one who's disappointed. Someone who's more disappointed than you, of course, other than the road makers, is Mr. Nitin Gadkari. He is clearly, we've accessed a letter that was written from the road ministry to the North Block earlier, and it seems to line up all the issues with the proposal. It will be difficult to honor the arbitral awards. There will be road makers are forsaken toll for an entire month, and that runs up to 1,000 crores by road ministry's estimates. These are things, I mean, incentives, everybody needs incentives in this budget. Everybody is looking for a stimulus. The question is, once again, has the government put itself in a position where it's kind of between a rock and a hard place? Let me take this question to Vinayak Chatterjee from Feedback Infra. Mr. Chatterjee, share with us your perspective. Has the government, is the government responsible itself, for the situation that it finds itself in?
No, what situation are you referring to?
So the point is that the government is looking to cut outlay for road sector for the FY17 itself, and for the next year, we are not expecting a big addition to that. In that sense, putting back infrastructure spending at a time when private investment is absolutely missing, and the sentiment itself in the private sector is very subdued, if not entirely, but certainly due to some part of it due to demonetization. Do you think the government, is there something that it can do? Can it pull a rabbit out of the hat on February 1st?
So I have a question for you in turn. The budget is not yet out. So how have you come to a definitive conclusion that the...
So we have very credible information that there is a proposal that works, which says that the Finance Ministry wants to cut by 10% the FY17 outlay for roads, 55,000 crores odd, which was settled. It has now been revised to 52,000 odd crores. And therefore, the Road Ministry is unhappy with it. There is a letter that has gone. We've accessed that letter, and you can be rest assured that it's very credible information here on BTVI.
The budget is supposed to be a confidential document.
Of course it is.
And the fact that views are being exchanged between ministries, I do not think should lead to a conversation on a certain degree of definitiveness.
No, but it's an important question to ask at this point of time. Is the government finding it difficult to fund its capex plan?
No, I have a point of principle that the budget is not yet out. Every ministry is exchanging points of view with the finance ministry.
Mr. Chatterjee, every year the media does this. I mean, we are not saying it's a confidential information. We are talking about a conversation between two ministries. You said it yourself. So we are not really sort of we are not breaking any principle here. We are picking up information that this is what the government is working with. There are differences between two ministries. What do you think is an optimal solution?
No, I'm sorry. I'm not in the spirit of your question. I mean, you are asking, the way I was hearing your questions, you're asking respondents, so what is your view on the government cutting the allocation for the
If it were to, at this point of time, if it were to, on February 1st.
It's a motherhood question. Any allocation cut to an infrastructure ministry is not desirable. I mean, what else is there to say to this?
Okay.
I mean, who among your respondents is going to say it's a brilliant idea?
But can we then pull down, sort of pin it down to the cause and effect situation where we can say that this is where the finance minister can, I mean, this is the fiscal space that he has to maneuver with the funds that are available to him?
See, the question really is, the broad question on the budget so far as infra spend is concerned is that while everybody understands that PPP is down, and therefore even from the start of the, the NDA government, the emphasis on public expenditure on infrastructure as part of the kick-starting or the pump priming is a well-established doctrine. The real issue is that year after year, we see that the extent of off-budget funds, the availability of resources to spend by the government which are not directly attributable to the Consolidated Fund of India, that proportion is increasing. Whether it is railways or highways or, for example, if you have an 86,000 crore loan from JICA for the bullet train, it is not dependent on outlays from the union budget, right?
Yeah.
So if Railways is going to raise money from World Bank, ADB, JICA, IRFC bonds, and various other off-budget vehicles, then it is possible that the railways will meet their capex budgets in spite of a cut in the union, in spite of a cut from the Consolidated Fund of India. Now, how these two play out will determine the extent of capex. So the real issue to watch is what is the extent of off-budget financing that roads and highways, railways, power sector, and various other sectors are now moving towards, which will determine the level of capex. So any...
Fantastic point, Mr. Chatterjee. I will take this across to Mr. Mayaram. Here is the point. Mr. Chatterjee is saying that it is not entirely the prerogative of finance minister or the budget, the central assistance to provide funds for infrastructure. There are off-budget sources where both the infrastructure sector, railways, everyone can tap into. But Mr. Mayaram, do you think the current sentiment is conducive to rely on outside funding, particularly for a crucial sector like infrastructure? And we are talking about, the information also says that there could be delays in arbitral payments because of a fund crunch. If those kind of things happen, and these are times when we are trying to, sort of rope in pension funds from foreign countries to invest in our infrastructure, do you think the sentiment and the situation right now is conducive to rely on sources, extra budgetary sources for, funding infrastructure?
Let me just first clarify a point which Vinayak had raised. I think it's an important point that the letter that you're speaking about for cutback could be a letter which is speaking about the revised budget, which happens in December every year after the Ways and Means position of the government becomes clear, that in the last quarter perhaps whatever the MHI was to spend is going to be less than what they could because of the less allocation for the current budget. It's not for the next budget. Because no letter can ever go from finance ministry saying that in the next budget we are going to give you less than that.
I want to I want to clarify that we are not talking about any proposal about the next budget. It's a letter that has gone, a request letter possibly from a road ministry to the North Block, saying that these are the funds that we need, but it seems that what you're the cutback in the current year itself is disappointing so far as Mr. Gadkari is concerned. Take it forward, Mr. Mayaram.
So that's taken care of because it's not about the next budget. This is about the current the ongoing budget at the moment. Now, the issue that has been, the second issue that Vinayak is raising about off-balance sheet is valid to an extent, because there is a limit to that. When most of these organizations go out and raise money, they do it on the back of the sovereign guarantee. And under the FRBN, there is a limit to which the government can give guarantees for raising funds in this manner. So there is a limit. So it's not unlimited fund. It is not as if you can go and raise as much money as you wish from the market. There is a limit to that. And then each of the organizations which goes out to raise the money has their own balance sheet, and they would have to have their own credit rating, and based on that, they would be able to raise the money. So there is a limit to that. But it is also true that most of these organizations, most of these ministries would be raising money, which they have always been doing. So that we need to factor as to what would be the additionality that they can get. Because even in the current year, for instance, NHAI or IRFC, which is the Railways Finance Corporation, they have raised money for the railways, so which is in addition to what comes from the budget. Now, therefore, we need to see if in budget there is a cutback, and I'm again using the word if, then how much additionality can be created by way of raising money from the markets. Now, that is something that will need to be assessed on the basis of what is the headroom available to the government to provide sovereign guarantees for raising this money.
So, I take your point, Mr. Mayaram. There are limitations. Of course, there are. Mr. Chatterjee, here is the thing. Again, we are talking about if here. We are not saying that this proposal is final, but there are conversations that are going on. Let's talk about the broader picture here. GST is getting delayed. Private investment is absolutely missing. And if the government capex is capped at this point of time in different sectors to a certain extent due to various reasons, and then we are going to see welfare schemes coming in, do you see a certain impact on India, the bright spot, so to speak? Is it going to lose a certain amount of sheen? What should take priority at this point of time for Finance Minister Arun Jaitley?
The simple point there is the priority should be to raise to create the enabling environment for private sector to step into a big way into the investment void. It is investment and capex that is going to kickstart the economy. And therefore, the decrease in PPP that has happened, there is a full report of the Kelkar Committee report, which is a very, very well-constructed document that outlines the pathway to reviving PPP in infrastructure. And that should be taken up. There is the NIIF, which should be implemented, whose mandate should be implemented quickly, because we are reading in the press about $75 billion coming in from UAE and Canadian pension funds, etc. NIIF should be expedited so that its money start rolling in. And in the public sector, we have at least I can speak on behalf of the Confederation of Indian Industry, that we have made a strong recommendation to the Finance Ministry that it should follow a strategy of asset recycling, which means operating infrastructure utilities at the central, state and municipal levels are amenable to being sold to large PE funds, pension funds from Canada and US and Scandinavia and the UAE, etc., who are all very, very interested in operating brownfield projects, and they're not interested in new greenfield projects with risks. So in an asset recycling strategy, the public systems can actually put into the market operating assets which catch the fancy of these investors and recycle the money back into more projects. So these are the positive thoughts that I have, which the government should address in the forthcoming budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. This is exactly what we were looking for. It's our job in the media to raise questions. It might sound negative, but it's our role to play, and it's for you to tell us that yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Let me take this across to Mr. Vasudev. Where is the fiscal space that you're talking about? Isn't it shrinking by the day? Here are the state governments who were given a certain amount of money. Now they want nearly double of that in terms of GST compensation. This budget has to be about the common man, the last mile, survivor of the note ban, people who have been in pain. The government the Finance Ministry has to make allocations which make consumption, you spoke about it earlier in the show, the consumption has to grow. Where is the fiscal space? How does Mr. Jaitley, successfully complete this tightrope walk?
This state government's asking for more compensation. I think they are saying that the tax revenues have come down. Well, on the other hand, the Finance Minister is telling us that the excise revenue, indirect tax revenues are going to be 13-14% more than last year. So where is the question of the state revenues coming down when central excise revenues? So I think a lot of that is posturing, and as the GST negotiations go on.
Let me take this across to Mr. Maiskar here. Mr. Vasudev, I got to take your point and I take it across to someone from the industry. Mr. Maiskar, this is the situation at this point of time. The government is stretched. The private sector, the demand is missing in the private sector. So as a company, as a management in the infrastructure space, how do you work your mathematics over the next, where are your estimates over the next year or two?
I think listening to all the panelists, and the big question is, first of all, if whether the existing scheme of things in terms of cut in the outlay is, there is a big if behind it. Point one. Point two, as far as MEP is concerned and investment in private sector is concerned, I think there has been a decent amount of offtake which is happening predominantly on the hybrid annuity model, which has been introduced by the Ministry of the NHAI. To our understanding, I think so far around 28 projects have been already awarded. The company has backed 6 out of them. And there is a large pipeline of projects in terms of hybrid annuity and public spending in terms of the EPC contracting, which is happening at large. So I think as far as bidding is concerned and the demand and outlay is concerned, there is a good traction in that. Going forward, we expect the same to progress.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Maiskar. One last question, and this I'm going to take it to Mr. N. Ram. Mr. N. Ram, the PM Modi, the harbinger of hope for corporate elites and Dalal Street, India's own Ronald Reagan in 2014, and today he stands at a position where welfare economics takes precedence over other. I mean, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but the broader sentiment in the markets, we speak to a lot of market participants, and broadly the expectation is that we are looking at a welfare budget, and it's something probably the government owes it to the last common person, the last mile people of this country. And at this point of time, is it possible, or are we looking at a situation where the same corporate India, the same market men look at the India's Ronald Reagan as the Hugo Chavez possibly in the coming days?
Well, elections to 5 states are around the corner. Dates have been announced. 1/5 of India, as the newspaper says, will be voting. We're talking about 17 crore people, the electorate itself, talking about 690 assembly seats. So that's obviously the priority for this government, and much hinges on that. We don't know what's going to happen in Uttar Pradesh, where there's a lot of drama, great for the media within the ruling family, but also the BJP, which had 42% of the vote share in the Lok Sabha election 2014, has an advantage, but the situation is in flux, and it's essentially a 3-cornered fight with the Congress also contributing. Punjab, the Aam Aadmi Party looks in a very strong position. It got 4 seats in the last Lok Sabha election and surely will improve on it. Congress is looking to Goa, Manipur, and Uttarakhand to do well. We don't know. But obviously, that is, they can't run away from this. So the budget will necessarily.
Thank you, Mr. Ram. Thank you, all our panelists. Thank you, Mr. Mayaram. Thank you, Mr. Vasudev. Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. Thank you, Mr. Maiskar. Thanks, everyone who joined us here. And this is a wrap on BTVI on the special edition. Thanks for watching.